Okay, so it should be good then. All
And what
right,
class is
so
this again?
oh, it's an intro to government, just an intro to U.S. government class.
Oh,
at the
okay.
University of Akron.
Sure. What year are you in?
I'm a junior, computer
Okay.
science major.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, this is Mayor Daniel Horrigan. He's the mayor of Akron, been serving since 2016, right?
Yes.
All right. So I have a few questions here just about sort of what you do as mayor. First one being, so you work in the executive branch, right?
Yes. Executive branch of local government.
Right. So how do you sort of collaborate with the other branches in local government to manage the city?
There's a number of overlaps. The legislative side, I guess, which you can consider kind of like a board of directors.
Right.
But every charter and constitution and those things that give you a framework for operation are all different. Some give the mayor a significant amount of executive power. Others, like maybe have a city manager, or there's more vested in council powers. Ours happens to be a strong mayor form of government,
Right.
but there's a lot of collaboration between both, on the justice side, on the legislative side, and on the executive side, and even in county government that operates within and outside of the city. There's a number of agreements that we have when it comes to mutual aid, providing water and sewer services. And those are constant and daily conversations about how we plan, fund, disagree on all of those different topics.
Right. Yeah. A lot of meetings, I'd imagine.
It is. Unfortunately, it's a pretty mature style. We're coming up on 200 years of a city. Some counties been around 175. A lot of communities are, so these are relationships that are built up over the years. There's not a whole lot of, and there's townships too that we deal with a little bit with. That's a different form on commissioners, and so it's not brand new. We're not a new country that starts off with a new governing document. We've been doing this for a while. There's a lot of traditions, and part of it is that I think part of today, and at least the last 10 years, is that there's the focus on the system and how we're here to deliver a service, whatever that service is, and it's about customer service and how do we serve our residents. To me, all the textbooks, and I taught American history and American government in high school, and that was never really part of that conversation, but that's what government should be.
Exactly. And that sort of leads into my next question is, what sort of experience did you have prior to becoming mayor?
Well, I spent on the public service side, I taught high school for 10 years. And then I was on city council for 7. I was the county clerk of courts for 9, and then ran for mayor, and did some things initially out of college. I graduated from Kent with a degree in economics in '86, and traveled the country free. I did some then I went back to the University of Akron and got an education degree and started teaching. So it was a little bit in the private sector, mostly in the public sector, and kind of delivering on that same mode of, there's no school that you can go to take a class that says, hey, this is how you be mayor.
Right.
There's a varying amount of experience. You see a lot of lawyers, you see a lot of teachers, you see some business executives, you see, different forms of educational experience, work experience. It's still about serving people. And I think those are the successful ones, and you can judge success however you want. And that's up to, the voters at some point. They'll say yes or no. Right. And there's no partisanship in running city government. I believe in things, and if somebody doesn't agree with me, well, they can certainly, vote against me next time. And I don't argue that point. But there's an accountability at the election time, and you're held accountable.
So sort of what led you to wanting to be mayor? Was it a particular issue you were very passionate about?
No, I mean, I've said this for a while, about how we deliver a service. We should be in the business of caring about who we serve, however that may be. And there will be people that disagree with, hey, how do you plow streets, or how do you fix a road, and how do you do those things? We should be efficient with the dollars that we spend, because they dwindle, and sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less. I think the degree in economics really pushed me in a way. Efficiency is a big thing for me. Now, I'm
Right.
not saying we're perfect, but we try and do it that way. That's the thing that really pushed me. Good governance means a lot to me. I grew up thinking that way. I grew up learning that way about good governance and how it should be. And quite frankly, I don't think government as an institution over the last 50 years has done really a good enough job of communicating the important work that they do, especially when people say, you're this or you're that. We don't tell our story very well. We're never good at communicating, I don't think, as good as we should be, because it is important work. But the good governance part, I agree a lot of times when people complain. You're right. They're not wrong on some of those things, but sometimes it's the best of a bad decision to be able to make.
Right. And speaking of important work, so sort of describe the average workday for you, the start to finish.
Yeah, personally, usually for me, it starts early. If I'm going to get some sort of ride in on my bike, I like to do it in the morning so I can not get it out of the way, but sometimes the day gets packed up. It really depends on what type of leader you want to be and how ingrained you want to be into the details. There are a lot of meetings. There's a lot of public facing events to do that. There's a lot of meeting with the community. Certainly COVID put a damper on a little bit of that and kind of, I think, made government a little bit lazy, because you should be out with the people that elected you and the constituents that you serve. We can do that a lot more safe now, and I'm appreciative of that part of it too, but it's also an appreciation for that part too. So the day is typically long. It's not a complaint, it's just where it is. Some days it's a 24-hour-a-day job. There's a number of times where you get calls in the middle of the night saying, hey, there's this fire or a bad accident or something happened. And I like to let people lead in the departments though too. I mean, they're there for a reason. I'm not a micromanager. I don't show up at a crime scene or a fire scene and start directing resources, but I think it's important to be there to show support, for the mission that's out there. And so that's my style. Somebody else may be different. So that's kind of the typical day.
A lot of sort of delegation.
Yeah, I think you want to let people lead. And if you want to develop the next generation of leaders, they got to be in that department to be able to do it, or that position to do it. You want them to be able to make decisions, but you also have to give them the training that they can to be able to make that decision. I don't mind effort mistakes. I don't. Effort means a lot. It's apathy and ignorance that drive me crazy. I don't know and I don't care. Those are things that drive me nuts.
Well, speaking of sort of next generation's leaders, how would you recommend anyone interested in getting involved in government get involved?
There are a number of ways to do that. If you want to be in public service, it's very rewarding work. But the bottom line is you got to care about people and you want to serve people and you got to be able to work with them. That's the point. It's not about this job is not about you. And I think too many people, both on a national and state and even local platform, make the job more about them as opposed to the people that they serve. Period. It's about their personal agenda. And you can have beliefs of what you think. Hey, I think we should have lower taxes. I think we should have that. That's all well and good. And I will disagree with some and agree with others. But whatever it is, it should be driven by what your constituents want you to do. Now, part of that leadership, and I think is you can disagree with your constituents, but you better have an argument that takes them the other way. And they'll tell you when they disagree with you. They do that thousands of times a day, especially with us. That's okay. They're supposed to disagree with you, but it also makes you more attuned to what maybe the needs are. They may be wrong on an issue, and so will you, but you got to be able to admit that too and say, listen, we screwed up on that, or we have to do something better on this. And I think that's all part of that growth.
So let's see questions I have here. Oh, so obviously in recent years, there's been the COVID-19 pandemic. How has that sort of affected what you do in your position?
Well, in part of the charge is that you swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, the Constitution of the state of Ohio, and the charter and ordinances of the city of Akron. And primary among them is public safety and public safety. What we're trying to keep people safe. And so there was no pandemic playbook on my shelf. I mean, we practice for a lot of things when it comes to emergencies in the city. Any sort of scenario, and public health is in charge of that part of it too. So it required a significant amount of coordination and collaboration to be able to get resources to people, to get them the right information. I'm still a big fan of relying on experts to tell me if I don't know something that this is a good thing to do. And so I relied a lot on doctors and public health experts to say, you know what, it's not a bad idea to wear a mask. Okay.
Right.
Not a bad idea to get a shot. Now that's what I believe. And people can disagree with that. I'm not into the mask shaming business or the vaccine shaming business, but at some particular point, there's a responsibility that we have to protect others too. And so this wasn't a personal thing to me to say, dang it, we have to control everything. It was the advice that we got. And I actually thought it was pretty good advice. People can disagree with that. I think they don't do it in a respectful tone.
Right. Right.
I think, but by and large, sometimes I don't think we communicate that message very well, but we touch a number of mediums. COVID kind of changed all that. And how we interact with others and how we're a little more cautious, by shaking hands or sitting 6 feet apart. And it's like anything else. Things do change. Viruses wane, they go back and forth. It's a form of something else. So to me, leadership starts from the top too. It doesn't start from the bottom up.
Exactly. Just sort of a side note, when I told some of my friends that I was going to be interviewing the mayor, and one of them came up to me, he goes, "Oh, I got a few things I want to tell the mayor of Akron."
That's their right. Yeah. They have a free speech right to say, listen, I think this or that. I may not agree with them and I may have a counter argument, but I like to think that if my argument is based on what I believe and what I've been taught and what my experience is, and somebody else says, well, listen, I read this somewhere online. There's a balance between what's factual and what's not. And I think that's the biggest difference between generations is that, I had 3 newspapers growing up and I read them every day, as a kid. Right. You guys have 8 billion web pages out there that somebody really could print something and say, this is a fact. And there's not enough of to say, this is a verified source of good information. It still may be a different opinion. And I'm okay with that as long as we're coming at it from the same spot. So we're on social media. A lot of information
to filter through nowadays.
Right. And what's the filter? Do you rely on tech companies to filter for you? Do you rely on your experience to filter for you? It's so much, it's overwhelming. It is overwhelming the amount of information that is out there. Nobody can process that. You need AI to be able to process something like that. I'm sorry, I just don't pay attention to it. Right. There's an accountability part every 4 years, and they're more than happy to make their voice known.
Exactly. So that's all the questions I had planned. Is there anything else you'd like to say to whoever's going to end up watching this?
No, like I said, this is the way that I approach it. I think you have to be authentic to who you are first. I think voters appreciate that. At least that's what they've said. You have to be who you are, not somebody else, because you can't pull it off. It's hard to be somebody else and pick your poison on a national stage or a state stage. But people that are interested in public service, like I said, it's very rewarding work. It expands the gamut of customer service at grocery stores, at teachers, at police officers, firefighters, mayors, city council members. Dealing with the public can be extremely rewarding. It's disappointing at times when when there is tragedy and you see, people treat other people like less than what they should. And
right.
It's a difficult part, but it's a very rewarding and it's expanding. It should on a lot of emergency management things. And so like I said, I think it's a good, rewarding type of work, but you got to like people and you got to want to work with them. It helps. So that's all that I have.
Just what's your background there? I know it's the skyline, but that bridge.
If you look at if you go across the All-American Bridge and then look south from like the parking deck of where St. Thomas Hospital is, that is that picture that the United Way have that I thought it was the best picture of Akron that I've seen in a long time.
Yes.
And so they let me use that as a background. It's kind of neat. And so I co-opted their picture that they had, but it's looking south towards downtown, coming from like North Hill up on the parking deck.
Right. It's a very good picture.
Yeah, pretty neat. Tried to capture a little bit of the U in there, but it doesn't get really enough of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, listen, good luck this year.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Oh, yeah. Take care.
So yeah, have a good luck this year too.
Thank you.
All right.